And I was just explaining to Shorny and Nicola that my son is now in a bed, so he could appear at any moment. So hello, welcome if you are watching this back. We are in the all partner training session on working with schools, and I am joined by the amazing Shorny and Nicola, who are from Pixl Primary and Pixl Secondary. So we have got the full range of school from 4 to 18 covered with them. So yeah, I'm not really going to do much tonight, essentially, other than just introduce Nicola and Shorny. They're happy to answer any questions you have, but I think we'll probably do that at the end. So I will try to keep a note as we're going of questions that I can ask them both at the end. So please do pop them in the chat as you think of them, rather than forgetting them as you go along. I know sometimes you ask each other questions in the chat as well. That's also fine, and you're super helpful to each other. So yes, massive thank you for joining us this evening. So if you don't know about Pixl, we have been working with Pixl for almost 3 years now. And they are one of the best organisations, in my opinion, because they do so much amazing work to promote reading. Some of you have seen Shorny before and have met her in the flesh, so you'll know how inspiring she is. And Nicola, we all know you're going to be equally as inspiring. So yes, hopefully it should be a really fun evening, and you'll learn lots about working with schools, all the things that you can do to help them, because they really, really do need your help, and we'll remind you just how important what you do is. We know lots of you that are new come to these sessions and you might have only been with us for a week, so hopefully this will be a really good insight into why what you do is so important and why you should work with your local schools. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nicola and Shorny, and I'll switch to speaker view.
Lovely, thank you. I'm just going to share my presentation. I'm going to do the typical Zoom thing. Can you please let me know if you can see that? Perfect. And that's all. You can't see my presenter notes or anything. You can't see me saying slow down, breathe. Okay, we're all okay. Right. So
we can see your notes, Nicola.
Yeah. Oh, you can. Hold on. Let me swap displays. How's that?
That's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Lucy, for introducing us. Shorny and I are working really closely together this year, which has been lovely, making sure that reading in Pixl schools is coherent and clear. So over the next hour, what we're going to do is explore a little bit about what we do and how our collective efforts can help ensure that every child experiences the joy of a book in their hand. So what do we do and what do we know? So I want to start with looking a little bit. I think we're all in the choir here that we all know that reading is important. But I want to delve into some of the background as to why we're really focusing on this in Pixl. And this is why reading is so important. So in the nexus of reading engagement and educational success, we find a multitude of intertwining benefits for reading. It is not just about decoding words. We know that it's the gateway to literacy and academic performance across the board, from vocabulary to maths. We know that it fosters a deep understanding of the world and ourselves, and it can help nourish empathy and help support mental well-being. In fact, a study in 2009 found that reading can relax your body by lowering your heart rate, easing the tension in your muscles, and it can reduce stress by up to 68%, just reading for 20 minutes a day. And it works better and faster than other relaxation methods. Now, the study didn't go into every relaxation method, but it does say it's better than listening to music or having a hot cup of tea. And this slide just illustrates more than just academic levels. It reveals the real world implications of literacy. So if you're looking at below entry level 1, individuals would find the world a really challenging place, unable to grasp even the most basic of written information. And as we progress through those levels, you can see that the capacity to manage health, finances, and critically engage with the world hinges on literacy. This is why it's our shared mission to elevate reading skills. And it's about equipping children for life and not just for school. And looking at vocabulary in detail in terms of reading, the transition between primary and secondary school is not just a physical move, but also a significant leap in terms of literacy demands. The stark reality is that nearly half of our pupils are entering year 7 with a word gap, which reading can bridge. This gap, emphasised by the exposure to an extensive and more complex academic vocabulary, which is 3 to 4 times more what they faced in primary, is a hurdle that can be overcome by fostering a really robust reading culture. So teachers note that where reading habits lag, so too does vocabulary development, affecting overall learning. Hence, reading is not just fundamental, it is the cornerstone of educational continuity and success. And reading volume can dramatically shape a learner's intellectual journey. Brief daily reading sessions expand a pupil's exposure to language exponentially, opening doors to new ideas and worlds. The difference in word exposure between reading for a few minutes and dedicating a portion of the day to reading is immense, with long-term effects on cognitive development and academic achievement. And I wanted to just share some statistics from the latest National Literacy Trust research into the annual literacy habit study. Now, the narrative that reading shapes our lives is not just metaphorical, it's grounded in these statistics and the stories from our communities, and I'm sure that you all have some as well. Enjoyment in reading is not just academic success, and we're really aware of that in Pixl. It's deeply woven into the fabric of emotional well-being, with enjoyment of literacy tripling the likelihood of mental wellness in our youth. Yet the stark reality is that access to books, a simple predictor of reading levels and future success, is not universal. Ownership of a single book can transform a child's trajectory, multiplying their chances of reading proficiency. And that's really where you come into your own. The disparities in literacy resonate far beyond the classroom, potentially echoing through the lifespan of a child. In areas where books are scarce, life expectancies starkly contrast with those from book-rich environments. With less than a third of our young population engaging with books daily, we face not just an educational challenge, but a really profound societal concern. It's our clarion call, and for Pixl, particularly Shorny and I, are very, very passionate, ensuring that every child not only has access to literature, but also finds joy in the pages that could one day shape their future.
Thank you so much, Nicola. I think that really puts into context, doesn't it, the importance of the work that you do with schools in terms of supporting them with reading and getting books into the hands of students. I'd like to share a bit about what we do at Pixl with our project Pixl Reading. Some of you may have heard some of this before, but there are some updates as well. So I hope it will be a useful refresher if you've already heard this. So Pixl as a company supports leaders in schools, and we work with leaders at all levels as well as staff, and we have a range of materials for a lot of different areas of school life and work. But I'm going to talk today about Pixl Reading because that's very much where we're partnering heavily with Usborne. So in terms of what we have available at Pixl Reading, our aims underpin everything. We want to ensure that every young person can become a reader for learning, for life and enjoyment. And we do this by ensuring that school leaders understand the importance of reading and the complexities behind the issue. Both Nicola and I run Pixl Reading networking hubs to get into contact with schools directly and have lots of fruitful discussions about book recommendations and support for how they can be working with students in school as well. We also provide a lot of resource, which I'm going to show you today, which provides really practical and workload easing support for staff, because I'm sure you know everyone is very tight for time in school. And so we want to be able to give them things that they can pick up and use straight away, and save them workload. And if you work with Pixl schools, or you want to recommend Pixl to any of the schools that you work with, then I hope some of these resources will really resonate with you in terms of how they can support them. And I know some of you have been teachers as well. I'm looking at you, Sarah, for example. So we do have those. And ultimately, I think Nicola and I are both in agreement that our aim is to get books into the hands of young people and inspire them through amazing stories. And that is just such a big part of what Usborne do as well, isn't it? There's so many incredible authors. And whenever I get on a call with Lucy, it's very vibrant, the excitement that we have about the authors that you support and promote. So let's dive into talking about what Pixl does first of all. So how do we at Pixl do this? Well, we have a range of leadership support. So we have things like our leadership thinking guide, which pulls together our whole school approach package, which is the package I'm mainly going to focus on today. Just as an aside, I think of Pixl Reading as a bit of an umbrella term, in that Pixl Reading underpins several projects within it, which will continue to grow as we move forward with our work on reading. So we have things like our whole school approach package, reading fluency, and more. But this leadership thinking guide really does hold the leader's hand through how can they decide what they want to focus on in terms of reading in their school and what they're going to do about it. And that links to a lot of the resources that I'm going to talk through in this session. In addition to that, we have a regular half-termly leadership bulletin, and this is where we've talked in the past about Usborne's work, your work, where you can offer author talks and things like that, and we do promote the work that you do. In addition, sometimes if there's something really exciting coming up, for example, when Sophie Anderson's book, The House with Chicken Legs, was on stage, we promoted that through the leadership bulletin. Basically anything that's current, whether it's research, events, things like that, useful information, this is where we share it. So this leadership bulletin goes out to leaders across primary, secondary, and indeed our post-16 schools as well, to support everyone who is leading reading. As well as that, we also have a range of CPD support, which is available to you. And we also have our Pixl Reading Canon support. Now, this is where we've shared a lot of Usborne books. And in this Canon selection guide, these Canon selection guides are available for Year 7, Year 8 and Year 9, as well as Key Stage 4 and as well as Key Stage 5. And we share books from a variety of publishers. And I've just seen that Nicola's put her hand up. Nicola?
I was like, they're coming for primary. They are coming. I'm so
Amazing.
excited to get started on these.
Perfect. So they will be available for every key stage. There you go. But they're great because they take books from a range of publishers and all of them come with a discount. And I'm going to preempt questions about this. We do promote Usborne local sellers. In there we have how they can find their local Usborne seller, as well as the discounts that might be available to them. These are shared with schools on our website and regularly through things like our conferences, our networking hubs, our comms emails and things like that. We know that schools have saved thousands of pounds using these Canon selection guides, and they've used them for a range of different ideas. They've used them for tutor time reading programs, which are having a huge impact, and I'm going to come to that a bit later in the session. They've also used them to refresh their English curriculum. If you haven't read it, the Penguin Lit in Colour report that came out in 2021 raised about the issues that we have in terms of diversity in our English curriculums. That came out at the same time that I'd worked with Lucy on launching Pixl Reading to our schools. And so that really resonated with a lot of schools. So they have used these to help refresh their English curriculums, their library provision. But as well as that, they can use these for small group interventions, book clubs. It doesn't matter what the discount codes are used for, as long as it's getting books to students. So Usborne books, as you'll see on the next slide, are very much shared within this. Lucy spent probably hours going through, choosing books, and these do get updated every summer as well. So one of the ways that these have been used was I wanted to share with you one of our schools, sixth form actually, not a secondary school, a sixth form, wanted to do a big read project in the style of that used at Kingston University. They brought from Usborne 290 books for students and also books for their staffing body. They read The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and what they did was they read the book, they bought the book for everyone, they read it, they were expected to read it over the summer, and then throughout the academic year they had lectures. Because remember, they're post-16 students, they dove into topics like trauma, war, patriarchy, and really got into the nitty-gritty of some of these themes that were present in The Gilded Ones. So I just wanted to share a snapshot of what schools are doing. In terms of parental support, Nicola and I have got a lot of support for parents, ranging from parent support guides through to editable communication documents that schools can send out to save them workload, but also our Reading Together bookmarks. Now, these are really important, I think, any way that we can help equip parents, because we know parental engagement has an impact on students' literacy skills and literacy engagement, but we know that that is heightened when parents are equipped to have high quality discussions with their children. And I'm sure we know that many parents in some of our schools really struggle with that particular area, particularly if they don't enjoy reading themselves. And so a lot of our support for parents, like these bookmarks, give them prompts and things like that to help equip them to have those discussions with their children. So there's lots of different support to help engage parents as well.
And we also offer support in primary, and we've just published some primary parent guides, and these are all around helping to engage your child in conversation about books, how to make story time fun and engaging, how to create a beautiful reading environment using absolutely nothing. But I think one of the best ones that we've done, my favourite, is how to choose a book with your child. And this is where those reading canons are going to be really useful, and the reading bulletins that we have for parents is so handy, because a lot of the time parents will rely on what they read when they were younger, and we know that the books that are available now, I know we're in the golden age of children's literature, but there are some truly superb books, and there's recommendations that we're making, just sort of make them aware that there are such a wealth of authors and books and texts to be explored, and these guides help demonstrate how to do that.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that Nicola and I also help share book recommendations with our schools, our students and our parents, as well as staff, is through our half-termly newsletters. So these go out for primary, secondary and post-16, and they share amazing recommendations across that age range and reading spectrum as well. So these go out every half term, and very often they are full of Usborne books. I've heard in our Reading Hub Network meetings that schools have really loved books like Ace of Spades, Royal Blood. Nicola's children and I were very excited that on the 9th of May, Royal Scandal publishes. So we were texting about that yesterday, but this is what we want to do. We want to use these newsletters to promote books, to get people excited about reading, just like we all are here on this call. And one of the things that's been really clear through the work that we've done over the last, if we go back slightly, what really clear over the last few years that we've been working with Lucy and other people as well, is that so many students aren't aware, like Nicola said, of the books that are coming out today. So when we were promoting Ace of Spades, for example, so many students were saying to teachers, I had no idea that books could be like this. They think they're boring and dry. And as Nicola said, we're in the golden age of children's literature. It's so exciting. Where Sleeping Girls Lie has just come out, we should be getting that into the hands of our teenagers. So these newsletters, sometimes we have QR codes from authors talking about their books as well, but it's very much a way to try and bring this alive, share regular half-termly recommendations as well. And in the summer as well, we do a year 6 to year 7 transition newsletter as well, which I think is really nice. As well as that, we have our Pixl Reading Author Talks, which again are across the key stage spectrum. As you can see, there are a lot of Usborne authors on there, and we've worked with Usborne authors in a range of ways as well. We've done lots of work with Namina, with Darren, things with Tamsin as well. So it really has been a really fruitful partnership with Usborne, I think, in terms of inspiring young people. As well as those videos, we also have career-related Why Read videos with people from different fields of work talking about how reading has helped them both professionally as well as in life. We've got talks from an aircraft trading manager. Who knew that job existed? Maybe I wouldn't be working for Pixl if I'd known that that job existed when I was younger. We've got videos from a violinist from the Nicola Foundation. But I hope you can see how this is really covering all the different areas that can support schools with reading. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to save them time, help them have impact in inspiring their young people. So that is our whole school approach package. As I said, Pixl Reading is very much an umbrella term, and we're giving schools so much support to help them. We also have our reading fluency package, which has a leadership thinking guide again, because that's so important to help people through that, assessment materials, intervention approaches. And in addition to that, we also have a range of resources that can be used in the classroom, including texts, videos from authors who have helped with the whole school approach package too, and so much more.
In terms of primary, we really start from the minute they walk in the door, starting all the way down in reception, looking at how to talk about books, even how to hold books, beautiful picture books that we have, how to talk about the peritext of books, how to really think about authors, think about going beyond the words. And I think that's where I've fallen in love with some of the Usborne books that I've read with my children and that I'm putting into the hands of schools. And this, we go beyond sort of looking at how to teach a child to read, but how to teach a child to be a reader. And we embed everything through engaging and creating fluent readers so that they can read of their own volition. So our resources centre on prosody, cultivating a reading experience where pupils can really feel the ebb and flow of language. And I think that's where authors just really captivate children. But also automaticity, where words are recognised swiftly and with ease. And infused with a selection of really high quality books, we aim to kindle that love of learning that resonates beyond the classroom. And that's where we're so passionate in Pixl to get those books into pupils' hands.
So what is the impact that we've seen from all of this? Well, we launched Pixl Reading in 2021, and so we can really see the impact that schools are having. And we've shared this from people speaking at our conferences and things like that, school leaders. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of little case studies so far. So one of our schools who have spoken at our conference, they shared about their form time reading that they introduced using the Pixl Reading Canon selection guides. They put on this slide that I've copied and left it, but they've put Pixl Reading Canon. It is very much a selection guide so that schools pick their own rather than me dictating the canon. Explicit teaching of reading in all subjects cross curriculum, register and read, lots of different things, Pixl reading challenges, the Pixl parent materials, Pixl author talks, and the impact that they have seen is just phenomenal. If we go to the next slide, we can see the
It did
huge
not want
impact.
to go, Shorny.
Sometimes it just gets stuck, doesn't it? So if you look at they tested their students' reading ages, and this was the average at the start. After 12 months of using the Pixl Reading, this is what it has gone up to. Huge impact, I think you'll agree, absolutely phenomenal. And if we link back to what Nicola was saying at the start of this session, this isn't just about academic outcomes. This is very much about life chances, and that is going to change so many lives that they can access more texts, contracts for renting an apartment, job contracts, accessing hospital documents when they need to, but also that well-being and enjoyment aspect of being able to read a really good book as well. Again, we have another school who in June, this was their average reading age. They had very few students reading for pleasure. Over a third of each year group was more than 1 year below expected reading age. In fact, 46 of their year sevens had a reading age of 9 years, 6 months or below. We also know that research shows that 25% of GCSE students have a reading age of 12 or below. And those students are going on to our sixth forms and are going to really struggle with some of the Key Stage 5 expectations as well, just as a bit of an aside. So what did they do? So they increased parental communication using some of our support, like the Pixl support guides, the bookmarks, the postcards that we have as well. Tutor time reading twice a week using the Pixl reading canon selection guides, bathroom books. I think I might have shared this last summer, actually, this idea, because they just started it last summer, and it's still going. On the back, you know, when you go to a bar, and in the toilets, on the back of the toilet door, there's like that plastic frame that has like adverts on it or whatever. They started putting the first page of a book into these plastic frames that they bought. And the discussions around the school were really buzzing. Sue said that children were coming up to her and saying, you know, the book that's in the toilets at the moment, that is so weird. I really want to know what happens to it. And those kinds of conversations, really getting that reading community, and kids that weren't talking about books were reading them in the toilets where they were hanging out, to whether they were meant to be in lessons or not, who knows, but they were reading the books on the back of the toilet doors. As well as that, teachers modelling reading rewards and challenges using the reading challenges. And the impact of that has been really significant. And Sue's spoken at our conferences, and this impact is still continuing this year. She's been in our Reading Hub network this year, and the impact that she's having is just phenomenal. Students who receive one-to-one intervention made on average 3.5 months progress for every hour they spent with staff. Their reading age increased by an average of 2 years. Several students have made gains of 4 or 5 years. Just phenomenal. I'll leave this for you to read through, but I hope you can see that this is a really important piece of work that you're doing. It's not just about sharing books for enjoyment, it's having such a big life chance difference to these students as well.
I just want to go on and share some quotes from other schools about Pixl reading, because you're threaded through, that Usborne titles and Usborne authors are threaded through our resources and our recommendations. So these quotes are going to be talking about the impact that you've had with us as well. I'll leave you to read these. And I think you can see just how important those reading canons are, offering teachers as the experts in all those books that are out there, supporting teachers who may not be, or who may not be very confident in selecting high quality texts for year groups, and really giving them that wealth of knowledge and just on a page to choose from. So I think you can see just how important it is that we continue to make these available.
So last summer I shared this picture of a reading canon that a school were doing. They'd mapped out the fiction and non-fiction that they're reading in tutor time across the school. What's now starting to happen, which is really exciting, is that schools are delving into this in much more detail, and not just having a form time reading canon, but also having canons across the school for different areas, like history, science, and various other subjects too, which I think is really exciting. And it's very much moving with our kind of team of schools behind us towards reading across the curriculum, which we call disciplinary literacy. And that is very much where our schools are going. So many schools have really bought into this because, you know, you can see the impact that it's having. As well as this, there's lots of different things happening with schools sharing books through rewards, where they can be rewarded for something by having a token to go to the vending machine and get out a book and things like that. So lots of different ideas from schools.
I'm going to let you read these, but I think this just again reiterates the role that you have in supporting us in our awareness of Usborne books and the difference that we are managing to make with schools. And I think something that we can really keep the focus on reading through our resources, and I think in particular, those reading newsletters and bulletins are so important because they keep reading on everyone's minds. They keep reading alive in schools, and they keep the focus on reading on the table. So your role is so important with schools focusing on this so much. And I'm in primary schools, reading and secondary, actually, reading is guaranteed to be a focus of any inspection, and how we are encouraging pupils to read widely and to read often. And just to share some more of those resources that we have, we've made the year group selections, and you can see that they are subject specific. We have reading around the world. Shorny, what was reading around the world?
This was an idea that Glenn had, and he's rolled it around his school. So where we've got reading around the curriculum, he's been reading around the world. He wanted to expose students to texts from around the world. And I think that that is a really nice idea that you can be sharing with your schools as well.
Beautiful. And that just reading does open the world, doesn't it? So if
Yeah.
you allow them to travel the world through text, I think that's really lovely. Oh, I wish I'd thought of that one. And we have, oh, sorry, Shorny, I was about to steal your secondary and post 16.
No, I think it's you, this one.
So don't forget about secondary and post 16. We have GCSE text, that graphic novel forms, and we have books related to issues they'll be learning about. And I think this is so important. This is really, really close to my heart in particular, that children are allowed to read about huge issues that are going on in the world, or potentially their lives, or people that they know about, in a really safe environment. A book is a safe environment to learn about these things. And I think the more that we can expose pupils to high quality books that are educating, entertaining, but also really enlightening. And I think that's why I really like the books reading around the world. It's so important. So thank you for all that you do. So your role is so important because you help get books into the hands of young people so that they can fall in love with reading, help them to raise money through sponsored reading. Oh my gosh, I loved working with my Usborne partner in my school. We raised so much money for our library, book fairs, and supporting with author talks. And Shorny, would you like to finish?
Yes, thank you so much, Nicola. So I have a couple of questions for you before we hand over to us being questioned and giving your questions from Lucy. So the first question that I have for you, please pop it in the chat so that we can collate them at the end, because I think it would be really nice for Lucy, giving you another job, Lucy, because you're not busy enough, are you? Lucy, it would be really nice, I think, to share some of these ideas in the chat, but also useful for me and Nicola to see. So in the chat, what will you do as a result of this session? So in particular, I know that some of you, after I spoke to you last, one of your takeaways was that you were going to go and contact your local secondary schools. It might be that you have something specific that you've taken from this that you want to communicate with the schools you're already working with, but it would be great to share some ideas of what you're doing in the chat so that you can get ideas and learn from each other and be inspired by other people's ideas. So we'll give you a minute or two to have a think and pop some ideas in the chat. Just trying to find the chat myself so I can have a look. Angela, I want to contact my local schools and try to link with my local library where I used to work. That's a really great idea.
Mm. There are
Contact
already,
local.
there are already some really good questions in here, which we can go back and
I think Lucy's going to
going to
kind of do
guide
a Q&A.
Yeah, I've written them down.
Kat said contact local secondary school. Kat has said, keeps vanishing. Contact local secondary schools and highlight the link between Usborne and Pixl. I think that's so good because our work really does complement and it's so cohesive where we share we don't just share books that have just been we also share pre-orders and things like that, so they can pre-order the books and things. We'll definitely be contacting more secondary schools. I have a 15-year-old who used to love reading. I think it's such a misunderstanding. Lucy and I have talked about this. So many secondary schools don't know the amazing books that are out there. And I know Lucy's going to ask the question, but it links really nicely. Somebody said about Scottish schools and how they start a year later. There isn't much for the higher years. I'm going to be a bit bold here and say I really disagree. I don't mean to talk about Nicola's children all night, but Nicola's children are very much at the end of their secondary school journeys, and they are just as excited as me, who's much older than them, about Royal Scandal launching in May. I share regularly on the Post 16 newsletter books that have come out that I think Post 16 students would really like. So, for example, on our last newsletter, just off the top of my head, we've had Where Sleeping Girls live feature. I really don't think that we should be capping because I think there are, like the Gilded ones, that was shared in a sick form as well. So just wanted to reassure, I do think that there are, so I mean, if Lucy can take back that we want more, great. But there are so many books that you can be sharing for those older year groups too, that those YA thrillers like Ace of Spades, Where Sleeping Girls Lie, they are proving so popular with the schools that we work with.
I would just have to add, if your 15-year-old isn't picking up a book, I've been there. I've felt that pain, and I had a voracious reader. They've come back to books. So hopefully, fingers crossed, yours will do the same.
And then my second question, you can feel free to keep putting things in the chat, but my second question wasn't really a question. It was just that we were going to allow questions. So, Lucy, do you want us to stop sharing the screen and then the three of us can be on? Is that easier for you?
Yeah, sounds good. I will change the view as well so we can see more people. Massive thank you, Shorny and Nicola, for that really inspiring presentation. I think it's always quite shocking when you see the stats of reading, and actually really sad when you see the implications on everything for people if they don't have that reading age. But actually, it's kind of like the environment, isn't it? It's always a bit depressing when people talk about like climate change and global warming, but then actually quite nice to reflect on what you can do to change it. Like you've shown how much people's life opportunities can be changed from implementing these things. One thing I want to say as well, I agree with Shorny, there are so many books that we have got for older students. I went to a secondary school event with Mel Mitchell. She filled an entire room with books for secondary school pupils. And a couple of the girls said to her about Holly Bourne's books, if they had books like that in their library, they would read them. Same with the boys, not about Holly Bourne, about the For Beginners series that we've got. They really liked the Money for Beginners, Politics for Beginners. Those books, they weren't interested in the fiction, but it doesn't matter. They liked those books. So I think we do have books for that age range, and you'd be surprised at just how much we do have. Also worth remembering what Shorny was saying about reading ages of kids being 9 years old at secondary school. Actually, they do need, Shorny, correct me if I'm incorrect, but they do need some of the younger reading age books because that's what they can access initially. And if you're not providing them for their libraries, then where are they getting them from? So I have a list of questions. First, some are practical and some are general questions, and please keep popping them in the chat. The first one was, can they have a copy of the slides, please?
Yes, we can do that. I'm sure if there's any notes that we need to take off the bottom, we'll do that and then send them over to you, Lucy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I will, or get Alison to pop them on tools and downloads for
Thank
you,
you.
so they will be available. Do Pixl schools know about Usborne and what Usborne does, and how would you best recommend we reach out to schools?
So yes, they absolutely do know about you. As I mentioned earlier, that in the leadership bulletin, in our networks, in so much of what we do, we regularly talk about the partnership that we have. And in fact, actually, Lucy and her colleagues came along to our English festival and were sharing the amazing work that Usborne do as well. So yes, we mention it regularly in things like the leadership bulletins and various other, and the newsletters. And we do highlight where they can find their local Usborne seller, because we obviously can't promote everybody's contact details. So it's easier for schools if we say, here's the link to find your local bookseller. So we absolutely do that. In terms of how you approach secondary schools, I think there's lots of ideas for how you can do that in terms of reaching out to them. And it might be that actually some of the stats that Nicola shared earlier, you want to kind of word that into a letter and say, look, we know that you're probably having a focus on reading. We know that these are the hard facts about the impact it's having for young people. This is how we can support you. From a marketing perspective, that's probably one of the things that I would think. Nicola, what do you think?
Absolutely, that was exactly how I started work when with my Usborne partner. When I was in SLT in school, we had reading is always a focus. We were very, very hot on reading for pleasure, and I just wanted to know how I could get more books into our library, and our Usborne partner really supported us. We had such a lovely, lovely relationship with them, and it was because they wrote a letter, well, it was an email with the statistics. They knew the focus that schools would have, and it pitched beautifully. That focus and the statistics and the eyes on reading in schools pitched beautifully to SLT, and we worked together for a long time.
And do again, a couple of questions about this. So is Pixl in Scotland and Wales as well?
It is in Wales.
And Northern Ireland.
Yes, Wales and Northern Ireland. We're not yet in Scotland due to the differences in curriculum. Sorry. Although I am 12 miles from Scotland, so it'd be really handy if we can get up there soon.
And yeah, we talked about the Usborne books and older students. Can they access any of the guides that you produce? The Usborne
No, I
partners?
don't think
No.
so. They're all copyrighted behind the password wall of the website. So unless they happen to also be working in a Pixl school, they wouldn't have access, no.
Do you work with any SEND schools?
Yes.
Yes. So any
work
school
with-
can join us.
Yes, we work with be that SEMH or special learning needs.
And also alternative provisions as well.
Yes.
And do schools have to pay to be Pixl schools?
They do, yes. But many of them make comments like, we can't afford not to be a part of Pixl because there's so much support available to them. So if you think about this reading offer, so many schools when we launched this said that they would be Pixl members just to get the reading offer. And they probably pay a lot more to get that offer if they try to piece it together themselves. But in addition to that, they get access to conferences, leadership support, dedicated associates, many resources across lots of different areas. So this reading offer, although it's a huge part of our mission, is actually a fraction of all the other work that we actually do as a whole company.
And on that note, actually, this question ties into that. If a school isn't already signed up with Pixl, what's the best way to put them in touch?
I would ask them to email membership@pixl.org.uk. I can pop that in the chat for you now. And they will be able to tell them how they can go about doing it, what's on offer to them, why it might be helpful for them, and all those things. So I'll pop that email in the chat, and the team are just so lovely. So membership@pixl.org.uk, and we'd love to hear from them.
And do you provide any support for schools / educators working with visually impaired children?
Oh, I don't know if we have with specifics, because what we do is the overview for like reading leadership, and then that is led down through schools. So I can't say if we have specifically. I know that when I was at Pixl school using the reading resources, I worked with a visually impaired pupil, but I cannot talk for everyone. We do have specific SEND resources for reading as well. We do look at support for those who are struggling with reading or maybe not exactly where they should be, and helping to identify the barriers and things to put in place for that. But I can't speak as to individual pupils' needs, I'm afraid.
And do you have support for dyslexic children?
With support for dyslexic children, because we're an overall company and we have schools within us. So just to give a bit of reference, we have over 1,500 primary schools in our network. So we're a large company supporting a large number of schools. So what we do is support teachers in identifying barriers and putting support in place. So we don't have any reading schemes. We're not that's not what we provide, but we do support teachers in the classroom with any reading barriers.
I have got a question now because, well, other people are adding their questions in for both of you, which is, what do you think the key issues are in primary and secondary at the moment? Like, what are the most common questions that you're being asked by teachers, leadership, that our partners might want to be aware of?
Oh, mine would be easy. I think I've heard it from every single school that I've worked with this year, and it's reading stamina. Children are really, really lacking in reading stamina and resilience. So we've got the best phonics scores that we've ever had as a nation, but we're not getting that translating into our end of key stage year 6 SATs results. And it's really about drilling down. We know that those tests, the extracts are getting wordier, the expectations of pupils are much higher, the vocabulary they're being exposed to and the context they're being exposed to is much higher, and the vocabulary gap and the reading stamina is really holding pupils back, and reading speeds. And that's all down to that reading diet. Pupils not being pushed enough, not reading enough. The vocabulary gap in itself can be helped by reading, but I don't think I've worked with a school this year where they have not got a problem with reading stamina.
Thank you very much. Super helpful. And Shorny, what do you keep getting asked?
Yeah, I think I agree that's particularly an issue. I think generically it would boil down to two things: supporting struggling readers and supporting reluctant readers. Quite often they cross over, but not always. But in terms of supporting struggling readers, it's very much linked to stamina. It's very much a fluency issue. They just haven't got that automaticity to recognize the words. They can decode them, but they're just not fluent in reading, and that hinders enjoyment. If you think about it, if you really, really struggle to make sense of a sentence, let alone a paragraph, you're just not going to enjoy the process of reading, are you? That's where audiobooks and things like that and tutor time reading can really help. But yeah, so supporting those who are struggling, but also supporting reluctant readers. And that's why I think the newsletters, author talks, getting those regular book, thinking about Usborne book events, for example, where you can be sharing and showcasing the amazing books that are coming out. That's where those can really open their eyes to what books can be, because quite often when you do that, they realize that there are amazing books that they didn't expect before, like we talked about earlier with Ace of Spades and things like that. It really does kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, but it's a bit late for my vocabulary now. Nicola might know, but like in How I Met Your Mother, when the glass shatters and they're like, oh,
like the light bulb
and they just
moment.
realize, there you go,
Yeah.
light bulb moment. That's where those light bulb moments come.
And Nicola, to put you both on the spot, and Johnny, which Usborne books would you take to, if you've got a meeting with schools you haven't worked with before, which ones are you taking with you that you think that school would really want?
Oh, Lucy, that's really cool. That's like asking me to choose between my children. Like Like, do you know what, Shorny, I'm handing this over to you and I'm going to go. I've got my Usborne books that I'm taking to school tomorrow morning in a pile. Can I go and have a look through?
Yeah, go on. Okay, so I would want to take a selection of, can I just drill down into, look, she's taken her camera off. She's really going to go and find her pile, isn't she? So I would go for some Tamsin Winter books. For example, Being Miss Nobody, or her latest one, Bad Influence. I would also go for some Darren Simpson books because I love Darren. He's a nice guy and I love his writing. Memory Thieves, Furthermore, Scavengers. I would also take, I just love the YA. So I would take things like, I've already talked about them, Ace of Spades, Royal Blood, Royal Scandal, because I got an ARC copy of that yesterday and I'm so excited. The trilogy that Namina wrote, the Gilded Ones, I would take that. Very excited to be promoting that now that's complete. Then in terms of non-fiction, I would take a selection of 100 Things to Know About, those books. I would also take along the ones that Lucy mentioned earlier about like the beginner's guide to economics and things like that. I think those are really good. Is that the right wording, Lucy, of the title?
They're called For Beginners.
That's the one. And then I would also, I really like, I'm an English specialist, but I really like, there's 2 books and I'm not going to remember the titles probably, but the Illustrated Dictionary of Science, I absolutely love. And there's another one, there's another science book that's amazing. Lucy, we used it as a prize at the science one. I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Like, I send you many books. I don't know why.
There's some really great science ones. So Illustrated Dictionary of Science, I thought was absolutely amazing. But I'd also take a Lift the Flat periodic table with me, because that's really good.
Yes.
I've just waffled, sorry.
No, you haven't. You've put
People
me
write notes. It was helpful.
I bought you time, Nicola. That's what it was.
This is my selection that I am taking to school tomorrow. I have the Spectaculars. I love this one.
Yes.
Yes, so good. I'm really sorry if you've got somewhere to go after this meeting because you've got Shorny and I actually talking about actual books.
Yeah, you're not getting away now.
Yeah, you might not. I've got some younger ones, which I think is really important. And I really like these ones because they bridge the gap between the phonics early readers and the chapter books. And people are always, always asking me for those. So I've got some of them. This one, which obviously has to be included. Loved, loved, loved this one. I loved Peril on the Atlantic as well. So I did do an excited little squeal. Alex Neptune, I love the Alex Neptune books. The first reading books, I love The Really Evil Weevil. I've read that to my kids and they're teenagers and they're like, can you stop now? Nature Spotting Guide, because I live in quite a rural area and it still shocked me that some of the pupils in the schools next to me didn't know where potatoes came from. So I think that's really important. Some of the phonics readers, I think it's really important that although we need fidelity to phonics schemes, that we're exposing pupils to a range of phonics texts. Owl in a Towel because of the sensory aspect. Write and Draw Your Own Comics because I love graphic novels. And one of my favorite non-fiction books at the minute, and I believe this is in our newsletter, is All About You and Your Body. So those are some of the, it's not the whole collection that I'm taking because I fell over my own feet picking them up, but these are some of the Usborne books that I am taking to my local school tomorrow.
The other one that I just saw was The Goblin's Revenge.
Ooh.
That one I think is really cool.
And just to flag that Shorny and Nicola don't just work with Usborne. So they work with a whole host of other publishers, but have that many Usborne books to recommend. And the fact they could name so many Usborne books that they would recommend when they work with other publishers as well just shows you like how much those books resonate and how much they're perfect for primary and secondary.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions for Shorny and Nicola about like how to get in with their local schools, what to talk to them about, any questions that anyone's asked them that they didn't quite have an answer for that they might be able to help you with? I know it's a lot to take in. I mainly just saw Anne's happy face as well, Nicola, when you mentioned AM Howell, big AM Howell fan. Like Anne is basically the groupie for AM Howell. And yeah, you mentioned
I'm a
her.
fellow groupie, honestly, just amazing. Yeah. Do you know what? I'm not entirely sure I can take this because I might need to read it again.
Okay, well, now they're coming in. So what is the best way to get secondary schools engaged, Shorny?
I think like we talked about earlier, I think the stats speak for themselves, and we know that every secondary school pretty much in the country is having this issue, that students are struggling with reading, and schools know that it's impacting on academic outcomes across the curriculum. So if they don't get kids reading, students are going to struggle to access the curriculum. So many schools are making that such a big focus now. So I think you are knocking at an open door in that respect.
I would agree. And I think Sarah's written almost the same thing. Best way to get schools interested. Schools have to get reading levels up. We know we do. We know it's something that we're accountable for. We know it's something that as schools we are going to be questioned on. What are we doing? How are we engaging pupils to read beyond reading to learn? And I really think including some of those statistics and quoting the studies that those have come from, they're on our notes. So really looking at those up-to-date research and just sort of dropping that in. You may have read the recent National Literacy Trust study that said, about the life expectancy and the entry levels for Key Stage 3. I am your local Usborne partner, I can help buy, and then sort of really going in that way. You are allowed to use the statistics. Somebody's just asked, they are all from freely available national studies. So please do use them. I know that it's something that I used in my staff meetings just to get buy-in with staff, but you really can't argue with those statistics. And if you are contacting, I would, contact the right people in schools as well. That's key. But if you are including those statistics, and also I would recommend just looking at the Ofsted English reviews and just looking at where they link, because that's going to be massive in SLT's mind. So I would recommend really pulling out a few good quotes from those statistics and the recent Ofsted reviews of English, putting those in the email. And it's very, very hard to ignore when somebody is saying, look, this is the research, this is the evidence, I can help you buy. So I think, that's a really good idea. It worked for me.
The Ofsted report that's just come out in March of this year, I've just put the link in the chat for you if you want to have a read. But it basically talks about reading and things like that. And so you can pick out some of the reading elements and in terms of the English curriculum as well. So you might want to have a quick flick through that document as well.
Is there a list of the schools? Is there a list of Pixl schools? Or is that GDPR'd?
GDPR.
Kirsty's asked a question about discount. It's just the standard schools package that's referenced on the Pixl thing that you can get up to 60% of free books from your partner when you buy from them. So it's just the standard schools package that you offer that Pixl advertise you offering. Do you run author events with any of our authors for schools?
So we have the online author talks from a few of the authors, but they're not bespoke. They're obviously online. We have some videos from people like Darren Simpson and Namina Fauna, but in our leadership bulletins, we have advertised that you can get them. They can contact you to be able to get those authors into schools, and I know some have. For example, one of the schools in my area, they had Darren Simpson in last year, for example. So there are people taking up those opportunities as well. Sponsored reads I saw mentioned in the chat, by the way, another great idea, because funds in schools are really, really tight. So offering to be able to do that for them and to get them free books is always very welcome.
And we talked about this before, so apologies, like those of you that have been around for a while in Usborne. Shorny mentioned ages ago at the Leadership Academy she came to. I think sometimes you restrict yourself in sponsored reads, and sometimes, God love secondary schools, they're very miserable. The kids wouldn't engage with a sponsored read, and the staff rule it out before they've even started. And Shorny suggested stuff like a bake sale. It doesn't matter where the money comes from, because you know you can top it up by quite a lot with the free books percentage. So if the school doesn't think the kids bar year 7 would engage with a sponsored read, they don't have to. They could do a non-uniform day, they could do a bake sale, they could do anything, because what you offer them is the extra the free books package, which the people we met at the English Festival could not believe how much further you'd make their money go with the free books package. So it doesn't matter where they get that money from within legal.
There was a teacher from a school in Birmingham that I was meeting with recently. I meet with a group of about 14 schools that are all part of a MAT, and she was telling the rest of the English leads at that MAT how much money she'd saved from working with her local Usborne partner, which she'd found out about by speaking to Lucy at the festival. And so, yeah, they were so excited about that. So I can't emphasize what Lucy said enough about that free books element that you can benefit them from.
So you've had the statistics one. What would you write in your subject line to a school?
Oh,
that's a good question.
Ooh. I would probably mention reading for pleasure, improving reading for pleasure.
Yeah.
Because that's hot on the agenda. Or supporting staff in
supporting staff with reading.
Yeah.
I think this would be a good one for a kind of chat dump, wouldn't it? Where we could all come up with some ideas.
What I would say as well is don't give up on first email. I get emailed by people all the time, who I quite often ignore just because I'm busy. But some of them I have actually booked on a course, and this guy emailed me, I think 7 times before I actually properly engaged with his emails. And then I was actually interested in what he had to say. And he didn't give up. Controversially, he had his face in his email signature, which is not a move I would personally go for. I know Massimo had his face in his email signature. I was actually interested in his course, so did sign up. So yeah, I think don't give up on first approach. Someone's asked a question that's more general about, I think it's more UCP one, about the catchment areas. You don't have catchment areas as partners. You can work with like any school in any radius from you. There aren't catchment areas where you can only work with certain schools. Do you advise on themes, etc., such as education, agriculture, farming, education, agriculture, where your food comes from? Any advice on how to help them in educating the school and children?
I've had schools. Yeah, I've had schools get in touch and ask for book recommendations from me. I like to see another farmer in there, Amy. I like to see another farmer. I'm a farmer's daughter. So I do. And living in Cumbria, there's a lot of sheep around here. So I've actually had this same conversation with a secondary school up here about how do we cater to the environment that our schools are in. So yes, I have. It may not be explicit in terms of themes on the reading newsletters, but we do make sure we cater to such. It's very, very important to us that we are rotating through and trying to cater to as many likes and interests as we possibly can. So I know that we have covered rural as well as urban, and really just tried to open people's minds up to what is up there.
You've mentioned older books. The farming kids at the event I went with Mel, which was Farm Central. And the ones that are more relevant, like the for beginners, they liked the money for beginners, and the like the climate change obviously is going to impact their farming, their future farming. So I think there's more books than you would think, but they're probably just more your non-fiction that are actually relevant to like them managing their business. Like Business for Beginners would work. Anything to do with climate change, I think would work as well. So they may not be as obvious as the younger farming related books, but I think there definitely are wider considerations as well. And yeah, Shorny loves the science books, and a lot of those are going to be relevant to you. We have gone over time, but yeah, thank you for all your amazing questions. I'm going to